Upon hearing about Trump's COVID diagnosis, I notice there is suspicion in Democratic circles that this may be a hoax designed to gain some kind of advantage in the election race. I suppose that in a year when almost everything has already happened, perhaps this will be one more surprise. But when I gauge the situation in Trump's chart, I am a lot more inclined to simply conclude that his carelessness and irresponsibility have finally caught up with him. His chart signals danger in regard to health matters. In fact, it is practically screaming. Saturn is in tight opposition to his 12th house Saturn-Venus conjunction in the 12th house, while transiting through the 6th. All by itself, this is textbook astrology that would incline any knowledgeable and responsible astrologer to counsel a client to beware in regard to health matters, no matter how strong or invincible they think they are. Saturn is in the 12th, which is the premier health catastrophe house, which is why it rules hospitals, and it is bringing that energy into the 6th, the house of the nuts and bolts of health, and from there to oppose itself and Venus. It's a crystal clear interpretation. Then you notice that the degrees it is in from mid-August to December aren't just opposing the 12th, they also connect to the rising Mars, the ascendant degrees, and to the Sun by quincunx, a notorious health and death aspect. Now keep looking and you notice that throughout 2020, Jupiter gets in on the act and challenges these points in the same way. Jupiter is a great benefactor when it's astrologically aligned to help you. But if it's opposing and happens to have challenging connections to the 8th and 12th houses, be careful, it becomes dangerous. In 2020, Pluto doesn't quite get far enough to quincunx Mars in the ascendant, but it does reach the opposition to Saturn and Venus, as well as the quincunx to the Sun. All of this 6th house action is very threatening to health, especially if you give it a conduit, which, moving about without a mask, in a country that is known to currently contain a lot of infected sources, seems like a perfect way to do it. Now dig further into the chart and you find Neptune in a long-term transit entrenchment within the 8th house, a house that it co-rules. This house rules infections and more dangerously death itself. And Neptune entered into aspect here in mid-2019 and isn't getting out until 2024. Natal Neptune is part of a T-square, therefore it is dangerous when transiting unfavorably. So this transit is part of the mix and it really raises the stakes. Then, to top it all off, Mars, in its much faster transit, is nevertheless currently in a direct square to his 12th house planets, which is another hit on that house from a planet that is notorious for being a starting catalyst trigger to the energies of bigger planets, and also notorious for propelling you into things like high fevers. Finally, on the daily side, when did the diagnosis arrive? On a full moon, with the Sun and Moon at 9 degrees Libra Aries, in a direct square to his 12th house Mercury, making for another 12th house hit and therefore acting as yet another trigger. As I am about to post this video, he is on the way to the hospital by helicopter behind an official line that it is out of an abundance of caution. While I do think this is the correct thing to do for any president in a situation involving a deadly virus, many will now doubt the White House explanation because of the many false messages they've issued over the years, and especially in 2020. Does he recover from this quickly or even relatively quickly? I would say that I doubt it, given the transits, but even if he does, this event has already dealt a blow to his political future and will probably sink him further in the polls. Bottom line, as mentioned earlier, the transits in this chart are yelling health and death. It remains to be seen whether he pays and by how much in regard to himself. But these chart patterns also apply to the country he is charged with leading. Because he is the president, it is possible that this crisis in health will primarily only be the country's health and death, something that has already rebounded to him so negatively and is almost certain to get worse.